Good evening, everybody. I'm Nate Eaton. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. Today is Wednesday, the 2nd of April, and we are getting ready for the trial. You know, jury preparations are done. The jury has been picked. We went over that last night. We have 13 men, 3 women on the jury. A lot of you have strong thoughts and opinions about that. Did Lori try to woo her way over the men with the jury? I don't know about that, but we will see what happens now that the jury is picked, now that the jurors are getting ready to report for duty on Monday, and now that Lori Vallow Daybell is getting ready to prepare her case. And not only that, you have Trina Kay with the state preparing for her case. We're going to talk about it tonight, and we have special guest FBI Special Agent Doug Hart, who will be joining me. Plus, we're going to take your questions. We have a couple of shout outs to say. I do have to tell you before I start, this morning I went on a walk, and I'm staying in a kind of a business development area. I mean, there's a lot of businesses around here right next to the interstate, and so I've gone out for, walks every day or runs. And anyway, I'm walking along and I see this, and this coyote all of a sudden just crosses the road. And this is around 7 o'clock this morning. And I'm like, that's unusual. And there's a bit of a limp on the coyote. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know. Well, first of all, I was wondering, is this a coyote? Maybe this is, it looked like a coyote. For a second, I thought maybe it's a wolf, coming from Idaho, but I knew it wasn't a wolf. It was a coyote. And then I look over to my right as the coyote's hopping, and there's 2 other ones. So they were like in a pack. And there's like a baby one, like one that looks like a youngster. And their legs were also dragging or limping. So I got this video, and then I kept walking, and I did my walk. And when I came back to the area where they were gone. So my question is, for those of you in Arizona, is this common? Do you see these out? Like in Idaho, we'll see deer. Not really in neighborhoods, but sometimes we do. Same with bison or elk or other moose on the loose. I don't know if we really see a bison out in a neighborhood, but we've seen a lot of mooses. But one, I haven't seen a coyote like out in the wild, quote unquote. And also, is it normal for them to limp? I posted this on my Facebook page, and many of you were saying, that animal needs help, call Fish and Game. But by the time I got back there, they were gone. It was, anyway, just an unusual thing, and another thing I'm learning about Arizona. So that's what happened this morning. All right. So the next steps in this trial. Monday morning, we have opening statements, obviously. Right now, I would imagine the prosecution and the defense are putting together their final lists of, here's what we got to do, preparing their opening statements. If you remember, a few years ago with the first trial, the theme was money, power, sex. That was the theme. There was a theme of the trials for Lori and Chad. And Lindsay Blake, Fremont County Prosecutor Lindsay Blake in Idaho, gave the opening statement for Lori's case. I asked her about what she did to prepare for that opening statement, and here's what she told me a few months ago.
I tend to sometimes work better under pressure. So I'll throw that out there. But we had talked as a team. Obviously, we'd come up with that theme. We'd met as a team, and some of the attorneys would kind of go through and say, if I were doing the opening, I might do things like this. So we'd had those team meetings, had an idea of where we wanted to go. And at some point I said, why don't we do this? Let me sit down and write out what I think. I know I'm going to be missing some stuff. And of course, for us, because different attorneys had different witnesses, I knew there might be something that a witness was going to talk about that was absolute paramount to an attorney that I didn't realize. Mm-hmm. So I remember it was on a Sunday. My mom was over in Boise with me during that time. Sky was out of town, my significant other, and he was out of the country during part of Lori's trial. And so my mom had come over to help with my son. He was about 14 months old at the time. So on a Sunday, I said, Mom, I'm going to run to a coffee shop for a couple hours and I'll be back. So I still remember I went to a Starbucks there on State Street in Boise, found a quiet area, sat down, wrote out the opening. I think it took approximately 2 hours to get it written out. And I thought, I'm someone that if I try to redo it multiple times, I'm going to go down rabbit holes. Right. So I got it typed out, I sent it out to the team and thought I'll wait for their feedback. They may say, we don't like any of this, we like all of it. So each team member made some edits. They added some pieces that were absolutely instrumental. They thought we should definitely have people hear those parts, made some corrections, took out a few things, and then rehearsed it a couple times. And that was the opening.
Every time you drive by that Starbucks now, you're going to be like, that's the place.
That's the place.
Did you do the same with Chad's closing?
So Chad's closing was a little bit different. And with Lori's, Tanya Rawlings ended up working with me to put together the PowerPoint, help me select photos. We wanted to have some photos that were not too graphic, too extreme, but started to paint the picture of what the jury was going to see. For Chad's, Rocky ended up working with me on my PowerPoint to try to make sure. He was the one that was very adamant and instrumental in saying, hey, as much as possible, we want audio clips of Chad. And so we really tried to incorporate those, and he helped me putting that PowerPoint together. And then as far as writing it, I'd written up kind of a rough draft, probably same thing, spent several hours on it, and then we met as a team, kind of ran through it, and then that night really went through and made it more detailed and to include the PowerPoint as well. Also in preparation of it, during kind of the dead time, I'll call it, that we had during that trial right before the close, I went back and I'd listened to quite a bit of the testimony to make sure, especially from the beginning portion of the trial, anything that I might have missed or forgotten about that should be incorporated.
It's interesting because so many people do well under pressure, like last minute deadlines. That's kind of like me. Like, I know if I got to get something done in an hour, I'm going to go. If I have a month, I might take my time. Whereas other people like to take their time and draw it out. Lindsay Blake clearly went to Starbucks. She wrote the opening statement, and that was that. Rob Wood did the opening statement in the Chad Daybell trial. Obviously, in this trial, I'm assuming we will hear Trina Kay. She will give the opening statement, and she will talk about Charles Vallow, I imagine. And she will talk about his who he was, what happened, and we will then see what Lori Vallow Daybell does for her opening statement. Now, you might recall in her first trial, Jim Archibald did the opening statement, and it'll be fascinating just to hear what Lori has to say with her opening statement. Remember what she said at her sentencing in Idaho. It was a lot of Jesus loves me talk, JJ and Tylee visit me, I'm friends with Tammy Daybell, that type of thing. And we'll see if she goes down that route. So that's what's happening now. Once opening statements happen, which could be done in under an hour or maybe longer, but I imagine it will be an hour or less, then they go straight into witnesses. And the prosecution has released their list of witnesses. I don't know if they'll go in that particular order. I imagine that I don't think they will. I think in Idaho, they mixed it up with law enforcement and civilian people, quote unquote, and experts. They kind of went back and forth. If you put all the experts on there and it gets too technical, you can kind of lose jurors and lose your audience, but we'll see what order they do. So Lori Vallow is probably in her jail cell tonight working on this statement. Maybe she has it all ready to go. And that's what happens. So there's no court until Monday, as I mentioned. Monday at 10:30 is when opening statements happen. And that's, of course, when we will bring you the video. Jordan's coming down to Arizona this weekend, and we will make sure that you have the video all ready to go. Okay, with that, I want to jump to Special Agent Doug Hart. You know Doug Hart. He testified in both trials. I believe he testified for a long time in Lori Vallow's trial because it was so extensive. He's the guy that went through all of the iCloud accounts and pulled data and text messages that were important and vital to the case. And also, he testified 2 times in Chad's case. They split it up into 2 different parts. So I was able to talk to him about this trial, about what he is anticipating. And here is my interview with Doug Hart. All right, Doug, thank you for chatting with me today. I'm curious if there's anything that you are hoping comes out of this Arizona trial that we didn't know about or haven't heard about based on the Idaho trials.
Well, I think that the main thing is there's a lot of information as it relates to Charles Vallow's death that was not part of the Idaho case, and so clearly that's the charges that are being pursued in Arizona. And so I'm looking forward to seeing some of those details come out and to have a chance to um, get an optic of what that case looks like and the investigation that unfolded in Arizona. We had some coordination with the authorities in Arizona, but certainly they're two separate cases, two separate events, at least separate in time, maybe not necessarily separate in terms of the conspiracy involved, but it'll be good to see this part of the case further explored.
You were involved so much in extracting all that data, the text messages and everything that we heard so much about in the first two trials in Idaho. I would imagine some of that will come into play here too, especially the texts the night before Charles was killed.
Yeah, there will be a little bit of that, but keep in mind we have there's a gap there, and to me that's always been something I've been curious about. It's something that I don't think we'll ever have insight into, and that is when Lori and Chad began their affair. Both were married to their respective spouses, and we know for a fact that they were using what I refer to as burner phones or other means of communication. And we also know that Charles Vallow had access to Lori Vallow's iCloud account and emails and messaging that would be stored in the iCloud account. And so from the time frame when they began their affair up until subsequent to Charles's death, there's a black hole essentially that we can't fill because they were using other means of communication. So we do see a few of those texts and that's really the very beginning of our visibility is that those few communications prior to Charles's death. But the vast majority of all of their planning was not visible to us because of that.
Interesting. Yeah, I had forgotten about that. So basically, from the fall of 2018 until July-ish of 2019, there's not much there.
Correct.
Hmm.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
And fortunately, I guess for the purposes of the investigation, you do have the text where, she's telling Alex, I need you to stay with me the night before Charles was killed. I need you to be close,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And then, of course, her movements in and around Arizona that morning and that hour after Charles was shot. I want to ask you, Doug, what did you think of her interview with Dateline?
Oh, I was disappointed. I think she bullied Keith Morrison. I think she was very aggressive and dominated that conversation and tried to control where it would go. And I would have liked to have seen her held to better account and to pin her down. What she was saying was so refutable based on evidence that was introduced at trial that was directly contradictory to her statement, and in fact evidence that was produced by herself in terms of the photographs. So her stories of what Tylee did or and then her subsequent death, it's very easy to say that's impossible, and it's impossible based on photographs that you took yourself. And so I would have liked to have seen her pushed and held down, saying, that's not true. It's simply not true. And we don't have to be there. We can show that by virtue of essentially irrefutable evidence that was presented at your trial.
Were you surprised at all with her demeanor? The fact she was so, I don't want to say narcissistic. Many people say narcissistic into herself. Did that surprise you at all how she behaved?
It didn't necessarily surprise me. The other thing to keep in mind is that from day one, with the exception of the interaction with Ron Ball when they did the welfare check in Rexburg, Lori has never sat down for an interview, never said a word to any investigators, despite multiple attempts at various times to speak with her. So for those of us who were investigators on the case, subsequent to her being taken into custody, we've never had a single interaction with her. And so I didn't really know what to expect. I wasn't necessarily surprised by virtue of seeing what her demeanor was during her trial and the looks on her face during her trial. But certainly, I think narcissistic is not an inappropriate word by any means. And I think that's very telling, that she, is obviously very, very self-centered, and her level of aggression was uh, maybe unexpected. I guess I wasn't quite sure what to expect because we just hadn't been in front of her in that way.
Right. You worked for the FBI for so many years. How many years?
27.
27 years. Have you ever seen a defendant do a national television interview weeks before they're on trial for conspiracy to commit murder?
No, no, it's very uncommon. And that's, I think, one of the challenges for the investigators, the prosecutors in this case, in terms of um, I've been involved in a lot of homicide cases. I've investigated a lot of homicides, some that included multiple homicides. But in terms of media attention and media scrutiny and the desire of the public to kind of have an optic and be involved, and obviously all of that, um, as our capabilities to have a national and an international audience expand in modern times, that's a challenge that I hadn't seen in other cases much earlier in my career. And so I think from the Idaho case, we had pretty much a hard and fast rule that until both cases had gone to trial and both cases had been adjudicated, that we weren't going to have any involvement with the media. I think that was the right decision to protect the prosecution, and but to see the defendant, who's acting as her own attorney, engage with the media is something I haven't seen before. But I also you also don't see a lot of defendants acting as their own attorneys and charting their own course
Right. How do you foresee
in that
that
regard.
happening?
What's that?
How do you foresee that happening going over the next few weeks when the trial begins?
Not well. And that's mainly because uh, trial is a very complicated thing. There are a lot of rules and procedures that must be followed. There's allowed types and lines of questioning for both prosecution and defense in terms of who can ask leading questions, who's prohibited from asking leading questions. And so for someone who's not been to law school, who has no trial lawyer experience to act as their own attorney, I just think from a procedural standpoint, it's going to be difficult.
Right. Are you going to watch?
No, no, I've got other. I'm busy enough as it is, and I'll tune in to watch your recaps, but I no, I don't plan on watching the trial.
Watching. Have you kind of put that chapter of your life behind you at this point?
Yeah, I think so. We've got so much work to do, and um, I think part of what Lori wants is her time in the limelight, and I think that's that's the flip side to the media coverage, the right to the for the public to be informed, as well as which I agree with, but to give her the opportunity to be in the spotlight, so to speak, is that's a little hard to swallow, from my perspective, because I think that's what she wants and she's enjoying that. And I hate to see her get that.
You have better things to do.
Yeah.
Much better. Tell me what you do. Tell in general, what does a law enforcement officer do to prepare to testify in these really high profile cases?
Well, for me, it's all about really rehearsing, not rehearsing, but committing to memory as best as possible all of the pertinent facts about which you are going to be called on to testify. So, and that can be difficult because typically trial and the investigation are separated by quite a number of months or even years. In this case, we arrested Chad in June of 2020. Lori had been arrested, I think, in February of that year, and it was not until 2024, correct? Was that the first trial?
2023. Yeah.
23 was the first trial. And so the things that are vivid in your memory at the time that you're conducting the investigation, and they're fresh in your mind, a lot has happened since then, and for all of us, this isn't our only case. And so there are still a lot of other things happening and a lot of other cases and a lot of other details that we're dealing with, other crimes that we're investigating. And so it's important for me personally to always be well prepared to testify, to try to anticipate what questions might be asked by defense. You typically have time to prepare with the prosecutor over what types of questions that you're going to be asked, but you can't anticipate where the defense, you can't know in advance where the defense is going to go. And so really it's just about reviewing the material. In this case, the material was incredibly voluminous, and so preparing for trial presented a challenge because of simply the sheer volume of information that we had to review time and again in order to get ready.
Right. And I remember clearly those PowerPoints that you put together with all of that data. Weren't you called to testify 2 times in the trials?
Yes.
In both trials, you took the stand twice.
No, in the first trial, it was just once.
Okay.
And then in the second trial, we decided if we were able and had agreements in advance, which we were able to hash that out, that splitting my testimony up would be a better way of presenting that amount of information, which, as you saw, was quite a bit. And so splitting it up in the second trial was what we decided to do.
Yeah. A big thanks to Doug Hart and all of the other law enforcement agents and officers who worked on this case and really, gave their all to bring justice to JJ, Tylee, Tammy, and now Charles. Okay, I want to thank our sponsor of Courtroom Insider, Browning Law. You can learn more about the services they offer by going to their website. Alan Browning and his team there at Browning Law, thank you for sponsoring Courtroom Insider. And shout out to Teton Toyota as well. They're the reason I got here in this beautiful Toyota Prius. It is a newer version Prius, and it has lots of space and gets incredible mileage. I can't even tell when I'm starting the car. I'm not getting paid to say this or anything like that, but I just want to thank Teton Toyota for supporting East Idaho News and making it so that I can be here and that I can cover this trial for you. Okay, we have a couple of shout outs. Here we go. Dawn Burns. Dawn, thank you for watching. Darlene Richer, Sherry Goodell, Sydney Calhoun, Annette Pulley, Alana North, Todd Jansen. Hey, my neighbor was named Todd Jensen growing up. I think this is different, but if both Todds, hello to you. Rhonda Higgins, Delia Harper Ward, and Angela Sakota. Good to see you. And we have people watching from all over the world. It's amazing. If you haven't told me where you're watching from, please put it in the comments because I love to go back and see these. I have a little bit of a cough, but I'm feeling much better tonight. Niagara Falls. Beautiful. Thank you for watching. Spain, Scotland, Victoria, Australia, Lakeside, San Diego. Is that near Legoland? I think it is. We love Legoland. Love San Diego. Charleston, South Carolina. Hello to you. Beautiful place. Ryrie, just down the street from Idaho Falls, where I'm at. North Dakota, Rathdrum, Idaho, Sunset, Louisiana, and Michigan. So many amazing places, and so thankful and grateful that you all support me and East Idaho News. Okay, here we go. Questions. Chris asks, will the jury be sequestered? Nope, there's been no talk of that. It is possible, when they get the case, when they actually start deliberating, that they might be sequestered. They were in Chad Daybell's case. Remember, they had to stay at a hotel. They were taken by buses back and forth to the hotel. I don't think that'll happen in this case. They were not in Lori's case. And I would imagine the judge would have brought that up during questioning that, are you going to have an issue to be sequestered? What'll be fascinating is how long will they take? I mean, if they get this case, there's one charge, conspiracy to commit murder. It's not like they have to talk about 7 different charges. There's one. Will they take an hour? Will they take a day? Will they take a week? We'll see. But no, they will not be sequestered. They'll be able to go back and forth to home. K, can my 14 and 15-year-old children come to court, and can I come with my wheelchair as I have a broken leg? You can come with your wheelchair. There's an elevator that gets you up to the 5th floor. Might be a little challenging finagling around, but it's going to be fine. I have not heard anything about children. However, on the courtroom directly across from where this trial is happening, there is a sign on the door that says nobody under 18 allowed. So I would imagine your teenagers will be fine. I know one day in Chad Daybell's case, someone came with a younger child, maybe 10 or 11, and they stayed for like an hour and left. And I don't know if they left on their own accord or if the deputy suggested they leave because of the evidence and whatnot. But yeah, your teenagers should be fine and you should be able to come. If you make it, come say hi. Can Chad and Lori communicate? They cannot. Their inmates aren't allowed to. Well, the rules say inmates are not allowed to communicate with each other. Chad's on death row. She's here. All of the mail is read. All of the calls are listened to. In fact, that was an issue that Lori raised the other day about her phone calls with her appellate attorney in Idaho, that he's listening to these calls and, the prosecution's listening to these calls and whatnot. But yeah, they're not supposed to communicate. By the way, on that issue, it was resolved. Basically, we didn't talk about this the other day, but what it was Lori was complaining that the prosecutor had confidential, privileged communication between her and her attorney, which would be an issue if the prosecutor has privileged communication. But what the prosecutor had and disclosed immediately to the defense, she said, is that when her appellate attorney called in to Lori, it was on the normal line. The line, like if I were to call Lori or you were to call her, they give you a notice. This call is being recorded and may be listened to. And so the communication, he was trying to set up the confidential line. He was trying to work through the bugs to set up a confidential communication system. And according to the judge, the only communication that Trina K got was this kind of, hey, I'm working to set it up. This, like, nothing really there. Just, working on getting the line set up or whatever. So that's what that issue was about the other day. Missy asks if Chad's books are still selling and does he get the money? I don't believe so. In fact, I'm going to Google right now. They are for sale on Amazon. It looks like $9.99 for Chasing Paradise. $7.99 for The Great Gathering, Standing in Holy Places, Book 1. It has 265 reviews. It looks like they're all from like 2010, not all of them, but most of the reviews. I'm going to try to filter these by the most recent. Anyway, yes, his books are still for sale. I would imagine, oddly enough, that, okay. Somebody wrote in 2020, never would have bought this had I known Chad Daybell is involved in a major crime case, including the bodies of his new wife's 2 dead children found on his property. Yikes. So anyway, yeah, they're still for sale. You can buy them. I'm not sure where the money goes. They wouldn't go to him. It's possible that it goes to his family. If he's got this Amazon account, it's possible that there's some bank account that it goes into. I don't think it's making thousands and thousands of dollars. Idaho has a law, the Slayer law. You're not allowed to profit off of your crimes. And so he can't be making money off of his crimes if he were to write a new book right now. Not saying that people come up with ways to get around that. Like he writes a book, but it's really done, this is just an idea, through a family member who's not in jail and they license photographs to go on whatever. I mean, there are ways that people try to get away with it. Okay. Are you going home every weekend? Joanne says, I'm not, but I'm home this weekend. I'm going home this weekend unexpectedly. Got a flight out, so I'll be with my family this weekend. I'll still be doing Courtroom Insiders. You'll notice the background will be a little different. But yeah, I'll be home this weekend, and then I'll go home for Easter. And maybe a few other weekends, we'll see. I honestly naively thought that, the trial will be over by next week. Maybe it will. I don't know. I don't think it'll be done in 4 days, but you never know. So I guess we'll just kind of see how it takes. I don't mind being in Arizona. I do miss my family. It's beautiful here, though. Everybody's so nice. Everybody's great. Delia asks, are you sitting on hard benches in court? No, I'm not. Nobody is. The benches are amazing. They're padded and they're chairs. They're like, I don't want to say theater style seat, but you know, the kind that flip up and then you sit on them so that you have a back cushion and you have a butt cushion, and they're so nice. And there's Wi-Fi in the courthouse. It's a big courtroom. So yeah, and a diner, like a cafe diner in the basement or in the first floor. I haven't tried it yet, but people have told me it's pretty good. So yeah. Sherry asks, Nate, why did you communicate with Lori? Why give her attention? And is she trying to manipulate you in those conversations? Well, she might be trying to manipulate me. I don't know. It's not giving her attention. I'm a reporter and my job is to talk to people and see what they have to say. And, it's kind of like the issue that Dateline faced. She went into that interview with Keith for an hour and pontificated for an hour about her life after death experience and on and on and on. That's what she wanted to get out there. And they didn't put it out there. So they didn't give the attention, but it still is newsworthy. Now, if I were to put on Lori Vallow every day, is that newsworthy? Probably not. It wouldn't be unless she's saying newsworthy stuff, if she confesses or whatever. I'm curious also about who she is. Now, mind you, we communicated before Dateline, before we've started to hear from her. We were communicating when really the only things the public had heard was when she spoke at her sentencing. So it was new-ish to me, like about who this woman really is and what she has to say. So I guess you could say it's giving her attention, but I don't think she manipulated me. My thoughts of her have changed a bit, but I'm not, going to invite her over for dinner. I don't think she could come if I did. Do you follow the Gypsy Rose case? I watched a show or two about it. Not really. I don't have much more to say. I don't know. Did she go to CrimeCon? There was talk about her going to CrimeCon. Maybe I'm confused with somebody else. Well, I'm curious to know your thoughts. I'm also not really following Karen Reed, and that one has blown up lately. And I'm curious if you're watching the Karen Reed trial. It's funny because last year, Karen Reed was the same time as Daybell, and this year it's the same time as well. And then the other one coming up is Corey Richins in Utah, the mom that wrote the book after her husband died about death, but yet she's being charged with killing him, poisoning him. So that's an interesting trial. Sandy, do you know if any of the jurors from the other cases will be there? Actually, yeah, Tom Evans has been coming with his wife, and he plans to be there, I think, this month. I think he plans to be there for the duration. So yeah, he's there. I don't know about any of the other jurors. I have not heard. Justice, how old are the men? What about the women? It's a variety of age ranges. There were some young men, and I'll be able to give you a better idea on Monday because everything was happening so quick. This judge moves fast. Um, I'll get a better idea on Monday as far as their age groups and whatnot, and you can, I'll fill you in on that. And then old from I would say 20s ish till senior citizens. One of the women is a senior citizen, or at least older, probably upper 50s, maybe 60s. And one of the young women who was released was young. I say young woman because she was young. She was probably in her 20s or 30s. She's the one that had seen some coverage. Bluebell, do the jurors realize she's the defendant? She's the defendant. I don't know if they did, but she told them. And in fact, the judge told them too. The judge said, in this case, Ms. Vallow Daybell, how it worked was they all introduced themselves. The judge said, I'm Justin Boreski. My court staff are so-and-so, 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 so-and-so. Prosecution, please introduce yourself. Lori Vallow Daybell, please introduce yourself. And then Lori stood up and started to say, my name's Lori Vallow Daybell. I'm defending myself in these charges. Then she started to say, I'm 51. And the judge stopped her and said, hold up. This is a time for questioning, not a time to talk. And so they do know now that she is the defendant. Did you witness jury selection? I did, every second of it, Brianna. And it moved quick. It normally jury selection is kind of tedious and slow, but Monday we had that hearing in the afternoon, which was wow. And then Tuesday we had a jury. So yeah. Can you FOIA Lori's jailhouse calls and share them with us? I tried to do that in Idaho, but they are protected. They are not open to the public. And I believe I need to check in on Arizona and see if those are public record. The exceptions are if they're admitted into trial and they become evidence, then we can get them. Otherwise, with Idaho, I'd love to have all of the Idaho ones ready to go and see what is happening and share those with you. So yeah, that's what we've got there. Barley, did the prosecution have free kicks for no reason to get rid of some jurors, as I do not like 13 men and 3 women, and it could ultimately be all men if there were 3 women alternates? That is a good point. If the lottery system ends up that the 4 numbers they pick to be removed are all women, you could have an all-male jury. I don't know. The judge did not explain publicly how many strikes each side got for without cause. So there's the strikes for cause, meaning they have a hardship, they can't make it to court every day, they have somebody who's sick, they can't miss their job, whatever. One of them was pregnant, so she was released and due in June. So there's those strikes. And then in Idaho, at least, we knew the judge announced how many strikes each side got without cause. You could just say, I don't like that person. They said that they're a gun owner. I don't want that. Strike them. I would imagine that there may have been some of those, but I don't know. If there was, it was done while they were on the headphones in the sidebar, and we don't know. The judge didn't explain it to us. But good question. That would be interesting. That would be interesting too if it was an all-male jury, which would be, fascinating. So many of you have written and been like, oh, she's going to charm them. She's going to woo them. She's going to this, she's going to that. People are able to see authenticity. People are able to see truth. And, Trina Kay is a very experienced attorney. She told me the other day, she thinks she's been doing this 30 years. It would be also interesting if Lori's legal team, if she let them do the questioning. I'd love to hear from them. We don't hear from them anymore. And also, I think if they were doing the case, they would need more time. I don't think this trial would be happening right now. And then when this one's over, we have another one for Brandon, which is going to start end of May, jury selection, very end of May, and then go into June. So we'll be back here again. Okay, I think those are it for the questions. I know you have so many more, so please keep giving them. What I want you to do is, if you have a question for Rachel Smith, the special prosecutor, she's going to be here on Friday, and it's going to be a Q&A back and forth. All the questions will come from you. So please submit them if you have questions about the jury system, about prosecuting a crime, a homicide, a death penalty case, about Lori Vallow's case, whatever you have in Idaho. Please share it with me because we'd love to pass it along and let her know. And then tomorrow we'll be here, still working on the guest. Hope to have a guest here, but we will be here for another edition of Courtroom Insider, likely from my basement because I'm going to be home. So yeah, thank you all very much for watching. Here is where you can follow me. I am on Facebook, Twitter, X, Insta, and YouTube, and many of you are on our the Eatons YouTube channel. Thank you for that. That's where we post my daughter's interviews and some other fun family stuff that aren't so full of crime. But we also do Courtroom Insider on there too. All right, everybody, have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock Mountain Time for another edition of Courtroom Insider.